From God our Father, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. You ever notice in this life we can have a bit of a nostalgia for things that are old? I mean, who wouldn't want one of those classic muscle cars? I wouldn't mind having one of those in my garage. I still have to say I have a softness in my heart for 60s and 70s rock and roll music, because that's what I grew up listening to on road trips with Mom and Dad. Maybe some of you have this old decoration or ornament that just has to go on the tree, even though it doesn't fit the rest of your decor, because it's attached to a memory or a person that is special to you. You know, the old things are not always bad. But yet we also know that some old things are better going away, aren't they? Like that old orange shag carpeting from back in the day. Or blue leisure suits. Or some of the old hairstyles from back in the day. And that sometimes, yes, things going away, better off. Just like today, in God's Word, Jesus also speaks about something old going away. I like those things. We are better off. Today in our reading from Hebrews, our second reading, we find the Hebrew writer quoting Jesus as he's quoting Psalm 40. This is what he says. It says, "Sacrifice and offering you have not desired, but a body have you prepared for me. In burnt offerings and sin offerings you have taken no pleasure. Then I said, Behold, I have come to do your will, O God, as is written of me in the scroll of the book." Jesus describing something that came with something old, the Old Covenant. As you probably know, if you've studied your Old Testament, you know that in God's Old Testament law, He prescribed and required all these sacrifices and offerings for sin and other things. Something that God put in His law, because God had this law of justice that a life was required for a life. Blood spilled for blood spared. So each of those sacrifices He prescribed, those burnt offerings, those sin offerings, all had a purpose. But as Jesus reveals in these words of His, that they were not really what the Lord most desired. A Lutheran pastor by the name of Richard Lauersdorf wrote in his Bible commentary on Hebrews, he says this: "Rivers of animal blood, mountains of dead animals were not what God really wanted, though He commanded them in the law. God was not pleased with just outward repetition of such sacrifices if willing, obedient hearts were not behind them. What God desired was that to which all those Old Testament sacrifices pointed, the willing sacrifice of His Son." What Jesus revealed in those words, that what God most desired was to give His Son a body. A body so that would stop these endless sacrifices of all of these animals and sin offerings, as He would be the one final sacrifice for sin. That He would take pleasure in His Son, who would be willing to bow to His Father's will, to take on this body, to be that one final sacrifice. The one to which God the Father then would do away with the old covenant and all of those sacrifices that came with it, because He would establish through Christ a new covenant. That's why the Hebrew writer says He abolishes the first in order to establish the second. See, for a new covenant to be made between God and man, that old one had to go away. In order for a new one to be established, God had to sacrifice Himself. The reason for that is because the way they did covenants back in the day. You see, in order to establish a new covenant, the old one had to go away. And how they established covenants in ancient times was through the shedding blood. The Hebrew word for covenant literally means to cut. We see an example of this in Genesis chapter 15. As God tells Abraham to do what would seem like a strange thing. He tells him to take a heifer, a ram, and a goat, and some birds. tells them to cut them in half and place the pieces opposite each other. Now, it might seem like kind of a grotesque, a disturbing kind of thing to do, but that's the way that they established covenants in those days. That leaders or dignitaries would do such a thing. They would take these animals and they'd place the pieces opposite of each other, and then these dignitaries or leaders would walk between the pieces and shake hands, signifying by doing that I promise to do to myself what has been done to these animals if I do not keep my promise to you, my covenant to you. Significance of what Jesus is doing, or God is doing here with Abraham, is that he tells him to do this, to take these pieces and put them opposite. And then, as the sun went down, God put Abraham into a deep sleep. And then God, in the form of a smoking fire pot and a blazing torch, passes between the pieces. It was God establishing a covenant with Abraham, that telling him that I am going to give you an offspring from your own body. What God, of course, did through giving his barren wife Sarah that child Isaac. And that the covenant with him was that he would give him his offspring the land of Canaan, the promised land, to live in all those days. And God is doing, by that act of the covenant, he's saying, if I would ever break this covenant with you, I promise to do to myself what has been done to these animals. Covenant God later confirmed that with Abraham and his offspring, as he grew them into a nation in Egypt. And then through Moses, he rescued them from their situation in Egypt, and he led them to Mount Sinai. And there, of course, Moses goes up to the mountain, and he receives then the words of the Lord, the book of the covenant. He then has Moses come down. He has Moses do a similar thing. He has him sacrifice these animals and build an altar. And first he takes the blood of those animals and he sprinkles it on the altar to signify God's part of the covenant. But then he has Moses read the book of the covenant to the people of Israel, the nation. He said, all these things that you have said, Lord, we will do. And so, to ratify their part of the covenant, God has Moses sprinkle the blood on them. His covenants were established. The ship. Problem was, they didn't keep their part of the promise. That many of Israel's kings, many of the people of Israel, turned away from the Lord, disregarded God and his word. But he was patient with them. He sent the prophets then to call them back to him, call them back to his word, but so often they didn't listen. So God knew what he had to do. He had to break his part of the covenant with them because they had broken their part of the covenant with him. No longer would his blessings and grace be tied to land or animal sacrifices or a temple or to a people just because they belonged to the offspring of Abraham. But now he knew that he would make this plan of making this new covenant that would be for all people. But in order to make the new covenant, the old one had to be abolished. God had to do to himself what had been done to those animals. The sacrifice had to be made. But not of animals, but of God very self. Jesus, his own Son, his very self, very God of very God, was the answer. Jesus had to take on flesh and blood in order to be that sacrifice, in order for the first one to be abolished so the second one could be established. And the second one means we get to be a part of the greater promise that God had made to Abraham. That through Christ, we can have the opportunity to be a part of the promised land. That new covenant. That he's provided Christ so we can be a part of that gracious plan, be a part of something new, which is better by far. Means God chose to make a new covenant with us that we get to be a part of, not by our bloodline, not by our heritage, not by the sacrifice of animals, not by worship in a temple, but it's offered to us as a free gift. A gift we don't try to achieve, or we can earn by our own doing, but is given to us when we recognize it as such. A gift worth having and believing in our lives, and it is the gift of Christ and the forgiveness of sins that He provided for us. He offers Himself to us so we can be recipients of His new thing, of that new covenant. As the one who was given as the once and final soft offering for all sins, so that you and I can be sanctified or made holy before God through Him and His forgiveness. So that one day we can stand before our Lord and inherit that place in our Father's house because Jesus went to prepare a place for us there. Sacrifice for us. Now, you may be hearing all these words today and think, boy, Pastor, I came to come to hear something a little bit lighter on the weekend before Christmas. This is kind of serious, heavy stuff this morning. Yet it's actually the perfect message and the perfect passage to understand the significance and what is so special about what we're about to celebrate over the next few days. Because what we're celebrating is that gift that the Father gave us of this new thing. That Jesus came to be born as a baby, to take on human flesh, to bow to the will of His Father, to be cut later on, so that we could live in the new, wrong eternity. We can live in His joy and blessing and forgiveness for all eternity. That's why receiving that gift of baptism, receiving that gift here at Holy Communion, receiving that gift often in the words of absolution here in church, receiving through faith and always desiring that gift. It's why it is so important, because in this place we receive the fruits of that new covenant, because we receive Christ Himself. We receive the very fruits of the sacrifice of Christ for the forgiveness of our sins. That's why John the Baptist's reaction in the belly of his mother, when Mary comes into his presence bearing Jesus, and he's in his own mother's belly, and he leaps for joy, is the proper reaction to this kind of news, this kind of new news, because it means for us that we do get to live in the new through Christ for all eternity through faith that believes in what He has done for us. And that's why we can sing on Christmas, and I can't wait to sing. Joy in the world as our Lord is come. May the peace of Christ, your transcend understanding, guard your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus our Lord. Let's rise and confess our faith together in the words of the Apostles' Creed. We confess, I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker